Records Backstage Beat. Thanks for coming out. Can everybody hear me okay? These are Los Texmaniacs. Anybody see them on the Wrangler stage last night? Put on a fantastic show. Wondered, could you guys introduce yourselves to start with?
One, two, 1, 2. Okay, there we go. Hi, I'm Max Baca.
Hello, I'm Josh Baca.
I'm Daniel Martinez.
I am Noel Hernandez.
Johnny Nicholas.
I talked to Max. I did a story about the band for the News and Record, preview story for Go Try It Out. And Max kind of gave you a little bit of the history of Conjunto Tejano. I wonder if you could kind of talk about that a little bit to start with.
Sure. Well, the music we play is Tex-Mex music, and it was influenced by the Germans and the Czechs and the Polish that settled in Texas right around the turn of the century. And so we started listening, through back in those days, through the radio and the sound waves, we were listening to the Oompa bands playing and the accordion bands playing from Europe. And so that's how we got influenced. And so we started picking up an accordion. A couple of the pioneer accordion players for Tex-Mex music was Narciso Martinez was one of the first, along with Santiago Jimenez, Senior, Flaco Jimenez's daddy. And so they started playing the accordion as well. And then but what made us separate us from the Germans' sound was we incorporated a certain instrument, which we call the bajo sexto. And basically it's a 12-string guitar with bass strings and guitar strings, and it was designed to take the place of the accompaniment part of the accordion, the left-hand side of the accordion, because the Germans would accompaniment themselves on both sides. So the bajo sexto, they wanted to get an instrument that kind of sounded like that accompaniment sound. So they came up with the bajo sexto, which comes from Michoacan, Mexico, and through, of course, from Spain to Michoacan. And then there was a luthier, guitar maker by the name of Martin Macias, and he started making these bajo sextos, migrated up north into Texas to San Antonio, and he began his career making bajo sextos around, I guess, in the 30s, 40s, and so forth. And now it's a third generation of bajo sexto makers. So that's how we picked up that German influence, and we call it Tex-Mex. We call it Conjunto Tex-Mex.
And I believe your accordion player had an inside track on the band. Josh, you were Max's nephew, right?
Yes, sir, I'm Max's nephew.
And you're the newest member of the band?
You could say that. I'm the youngest member of the band.
Youngest member, okay. And how long have you been playing?
I've been playing the accordion for about 21 years. 21 years, yes. I started when I was 5 years old. I'm 26. My father played and my grandfather played, and that's kind of how I picked up the accordion. I was born and raised in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and we would hear the guys from Texas playing their music over there. And my grandfather played a little. He played a little bit of accordion, and my dad picked it up and learned. And my dad taught me, and I was hearing all these cats, like Flaco Jimenez was one of my big time influences. But I learned how to play his style, or his licks and his feel, and that's what I loved and appreciated growing up in Albuquerque.
Nice. It sounds like you guys have a lot of, you played with a lot of different people. I believe, Johnny, you were talking last night about playing with Asleep at the Wheel, I believe.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about your background, if you will.
My background is traditional blues, and I had several different. I was very fortunate. I got to play with a lot of the great blues guys: Robert Lockwood, Johnny Shines, Big Walter Horton, Eddie Taylor, on and on, because those are the cats that I listened to that I really liked when I was growing up. But when I came to Austin, Keith Ferguson, who was a musicologist and bass player with the Fabulous Thunderbirds, took me to the Rock and M Club in Lockhart, and I got to see Santiago and Flaco playing there, and Flaco was playing bajo. It was really cool, man. Yeah, and so there's a picture they took. I still have that I gave to Flaco with Billy Gibbons and myself and Kim Wilson and Flaco and Santiago, and that kind of tells the story of how American music becomes, gets mixed together and different influences of all kinds of traditional music that have influenced each other, so I joined Asleep at the Wheel shortly after that. Had known those guys for a long time. I was really interested in what those guys did because the Western swing music had pulled from jazz, not only jazz but blues. Bob Wills was a big fan of all the blues stuff, and he drew a lot of things from that. So just like the Tejano music, the conjunto music drew from different sources, I kind of came up the same way. And of course, Max and we wound up through Flaco getting together, and so yeah, that's how I wound up with these guys.
Nice. Well, let's hear from the rhythm section. Can you guys talk a little bit about how you got started?
Yeah, sure. I grew up in South Texas, the most southern part of Texas. We call it the Rio Grande Valley. And due to my dad, that his love for music and the influence down there, which was the accordion, through Narciso Martinez that Max mentioned, and a bunch of other accordionists from the area of the region of South Texas that have started recording in the 30s. And so through my dad listening to albums on Saturday evenings, him drinking a 6-pack of beer and has accordion by the side, and he would learn a piece or two, and I'd be there just checking it out, and that was my major influence. And of course the culture, which offers the dances at the end of the weekend, or on the weekend, which were either weddings or quinceañeras, festivals, parties, family parties. There was always the music involved, and so that was my upbringing into this type of music. And of course the radio, which also offered other sounds, which was western or country or just the pop stuff, anything that came out on the radio. And me living by the border, I could hear both sides, which was the Mexican influence and of course the American. So I feel very fortunate to that, because I love all music. A teacher said once, one of my teachers says, there's only two kinds of music, it's either good or bad, and so that's the way I see it. Blending sounds together also is it fascinates me extremely, and having Johnny with us on this road trip, it's a good lesson for me, and I'm sure for all of us, combining sounds together, all these different influences that he had growing up, and with the influences that we have, so it all melts together in a nice hot pot. So it's a good thing for us and for the crowd, I believe, totally. So it's pretty much.
I grew up similar to what Noel was talking about. I'm from the border town of Laredo, Texas. Okay. So I had a lot of influence both from the Mexican side and the American side there of culture, of music. I was fortunate enough to live up the road from a great ballroom, and you had everybody going through there, all the big artists. Just doesn't like a ballroom. Country artists, everything you do there. So
who were some of the people you saw growing up?
That's fine. You have people, traditional conjunto players, pioneers, Tony La Rosa, he went people like Roland Bella. I grew up listening to that since I was 9, 10 years old. It was kind of a family thing. People would go out there in the afternoon and the whole family would be there. And also again, big country artists would come.
Yeah.
And from there I moved on to San Antonio, which is just a bigger city, more opportunity, more of a scene. I remember running into Max once doing that, getting to San Antonio, doing recording sessions. We kind of kept in touch, and I've been with him, 3 years, 4 years now.
3 years now, okay. All right.
We started playing together, me and Daniel, I guess, I would say 1996, 95, 96. I had just got back from a recording session in Los Angeles, in Hollywood. I got asked to do a recording session with the Rolling Stones. And I got back, and I remember getting a phone call from an accordionist, and they said he wanted to put a band together. And okay, so I was playing with Texas Tornadoes at the time, and with Flacco. So I flew down to Texas, and we put a band together, and me, Daniel, and Joel Guzman, and a bass player by the name of Stanley Revias. And anyway, so we ended up playing for maybe about a year and a half, and then I guess that's when Danny he went joined another band, and they became really successful in that industry, in the Tejano industry.
Yeah.
And then that was called Conjunto Macizo. That was another band, and then from there. Yeah, and then from there he went. Yeah, it was a big band, and then from there he went with the band called Primavera, Conjunto Primavera, a norteño band, and they toured all over. Go ahead.
Sure. Yes. I played with that band for about 7 years, from 2000 to 2007. We toured everywhere, all of U.S. and Mexico. Sure. Yes. That was the Tejano act I was with for about 3 years. After that, I went to a band out of Chihuahua, Mexico, Conjunto Primavera. Again, a big touring band, a huge national act. So I did that for 7 years, and then again ran into Max. Max had already formed the Texmaniacs.
And then just destiny comes around, and here we are, after 20 years of not playing music and then not playing music, and then we're back playing music together, and it's been a perfect matchup right now. I think the Texmaniacs were at where we're supposed to be. I have my nephew playing accordion, and Danny on drums. Of course, Noel is he sings backup vocals with me and harmony vocals, and then of course we have a true living legend here, Johnny Nicholas, the Texas legend, and adding that Texas blues and country sound to the Tex-Mex. Kind of like what Ry Cooder did with Chicken Skin, with Flacco, bringing in Flacco Jimenez to that, so it's kind of recreating again in the Texmaniacs in a way,
There was a legend pioneer accordion player by the name of Tony de la Rosa, and he said, no matter what kind of music it is or genre, if you add the accordion and bajo sexto, it's conjunto. So. And it's beautiful for me. I'm a young guy, and I grew up listening to pop and rock and hip hop and a little bit of everything. And I love my tradition, and I learned to play my traditional music too as well. And playing next to Noel, we've had some sessions and late night gatherings, hanging out, and
lots of tequila.
No. And jam sessions is with guitar or bass or whatever instruments we have there at the moment, creating a lot of different our own different songs, or messing around with different chords and learning music for myself. It's pretty much studying for me, because Noel knows a lot of different styles, and he's studied, and I'm learning that as well. There also is another drummer, our original drummer by the name of Lorenzo Martinez, that was part of this band too as well. He sitting with him and hanging with him was a learning experience to learning different styles of music. He comes from Los Angeles, and he plays jarocho music and mariachi and trio, jazz, and a little bit of everything. And I love it, man. And Danny, of course, he's a bad dude. Keeps the beat, gets that rhythm going. I don't have to tell him nothing. I just look back at him. He gives me this look like, I'm like, okay, and then it just happens. Like whatever I'm hearing in my head, it happens.
That's the thing about with Danny and drums. He already knows where we're gonna go. And I play drums too. So as a drummer myself, I know that when it's time to do something, you're going to have that extra push behind you, and he's there for that. Of course, Noel and singing harmony with me, man, and Johnny Nicholas on his guitar. His nickname was Guitar Johnny back in the days, man. So he's a slinger.
I believe you got that on your guitar strap as well.
Yeah, Jimmy Bond. My wife asked Jimmy what she should Oh, yeah. That's right. Yeah, sorry about that. My wife, she and I both, she knew Jimmy before I did, but anyhow, she asked him one year what to get me for Christmas, and so he said, "Oh man, you got to get him a Guitar Johnny a guitar strap." So he sent her to this place, that guy, another Noel, down in South Austin, and he made that strap for me. Yeah.
Nice. Speaking of guitar players, Max, you told me a story about Keith Richards. You mentioned earlier recording with the Rolling Stones. Talk a little bit about Keith Richards eyeing your Bajo Sexto.
Yeah, that was a surprise for me because just the fact to go, never in my wildest dreams would I imagine recording with the Rolling Stones. And so when we got asked to do the recording session, so we get to the studio, and the Bajo Sexto is a very beautiful instrument. It's handmade, they're all handmade, and each instrument is handcrafted by the luthier that makes these instruments. Anyhow, but when I opened the guitar case and I pulled the guitar out, well, Keith Richards was sitting in the corner at the studio drinking coffee, and Keith Richards and Mick Jagger was at the mixing board. And when we walked in, we kind of shook the drummer Charlie Watts and Ronnie Woods. We shook their hands, and they were leaving, and we were going in. And so when I got the guitar out, he just looked. His eyes he just like, wow. He'd never seen anything like that before. And so he came up to me and he says, "Can I see that? What is that?" And I said, "It's a Bajo Sexto." And he just looked at it. He goes, "Can I see it?" And I said, "Sure." And he just looked at it, and then he just looked at me and he says, "I want it." And he goes, "We sell it?" And I said, "Well, my father gave me it." He goes, "Oh, sentimental value." And then he goes, "Name your price." And then I just, I was with Flaco Jimenez, and then I looked at Flaco, and he just shrugged his shoulders, and I'm thinking, 20,000, 100,000, what do I, I was totally off guard, I had to psych myself in the beginning to go record in the session anyway, so, and then a double whammy with him asking me how much I'd sell him my Bajo Sexto. So it turned out that he asked me like 2 or 3 different times, and I didn't sell it to him, and when I got home from the tour and I explained it to my father told me, "Pendejo." He goes, he could have bought 10 Bajos. But it's a true story. I guess I can say I never sold them the Bajo, but
I got a Rolling Stones story.
Do tell.
I got to perform on Austin City Limits with a group out of Austin by the name of Grupo Fantasma, and Steve Berlin produced our record, Texmaniacs, and he also produced their record out of Austin. So they asked me to do some accordion work on the record, and I did a track with them. But they brought in the band director for the Rolling Stones, Carl Denson, which is his name. He's a sax player, and we did a Prince tribute, and nobody wanted to take the solo, so Steve goes, "Josh, take the solo." And I'm like, "Prince on an accordion? Like, really?" He's like, "Yeah, take the solo. It's an A. Just go take it." And I was like, all right, cool." So it was kind of a funk song. And anyways, I took the solo, and Carl Denson comes up to me with his flute, and he's like, "Hey man, I got a track that I want to record." I didn't know who this guy was. I was like, "Oh yeah, no problem. Call me, email me, and I'll meet up with you." So anyway, after the show and a week later or whatever, he called me and he goes, "Hey, come up to Austin and record a track." And so I went up to Austin. I did 2 tracks on Carl Denson's record, the band director for the Rolling Stones. He's a sax player.
Nice. Where are you guys playing? At the festival. What is your next show? Is it City Stage? Is that right? Yeah. I meant to check before we started.
I think the dance stage. Dance pavilion. Dance pavilion. 2:45 to 3:45.
2:45. So that'll be a chance to check that out. And I believe we're about out of time.